The gun felt heavier than Lyra expected. She'd seen them before, of course. Growing up as Vincent Vale's daughter meant growing up around violence wrapped in expensive suits. But holding one? That was different. Her hand trembled as she pointed it at Cassian Roe's chest, and she hated herself for the tremor. "Put it down, Lyra." His voice was calm, almost bored. He didn't even look up from the documents spread across his desk. "You killed him," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she steadied her grip. "My father trusted you, and you killed him." Now Cassian looked up. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "If I wanted your father dead, I wouldn't have needed poison. I would have put a bullet in his head and slept like a baby." He leaned back in his chair. "Now put the gun down before you hurt yourself." 3 days earlier, Lyra Vale had been someone else entirely. She'd been a woman who edited true crime podcasts in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, who bought coffee from the same bodega every morning, who believed that 6 years and 300 miles were enough to erase a bloodline. Then her father died, and the illusion shattered like glass. The funeral was almost empty. A handful of old men in expensive suits, their faces carved from stone and secrets. A priest who stumbled over her father's name. Lyra stood alone by the casket, dry-eyed, wondering why she'd bothered to come at all. Vincent Vale had sent her away when she was 16, told her she was too soft for his world, too pure to be stained by his choices. She'd believed him then. She'd even been grateful. The lawyer found her as the last mourners trickled away. He was young, nervous, kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to stop him. "Miss Vale, I have something for you. Your father left instructions." The envelope was thick, expensive paper that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Inside was a contract, and reading it felt like swallowing ground glass. The words blurred together at first, legal jargon and clauses, but certain phrases cut through with perfect clarity. Transferred asset. Outstanding debt. Cassian Roe. What the hell is this? Lyra's voice came out flat, distant. The lawyer wouldn't meet her eyes. "Your father made certain arrangements. In the event of his death before the repayment of debts owed to Mr. Roe, you would be transferred as collateral. It's all legal, Miss Vale. Your father signed it 6 years ago. The day he sent you away." Lyra's hands went numb. The contract slipped from her fingers, pages scattering across the cemetery grass. "He sold me. He protected his assets," the lawyer corrected quietly. "Mr. Roe expects you at his residence by midnight tonight. If you don't show, he has legal grounds to pursue collection by any means necessary." He paused, then added, almost kindly, "I'm sorry." Lyra didn't remember the lawyer leaving. She stood there among the tombstones as the sun set, her father's casket being lowered into the ground by workers who didn't know his name, didn't care about his legacy. 6 years. He'd had 6 years to tell her the truth, to warn her, to do anything except die and leave her holding the bill for his sins. She could run. She was good at running. But something cold and sharp was crystallizing in her chest. Something that felt like fury but tasted like purpose. Cassian Roe had her father's empire now. Had his secrets. Had answers to questions Lyra had been too afraid to ask when Vincent Vale was still breathing. If she ran, she'd spend the rest of her life wondering. If she stayed, she might finally understand why her father had looked at her 16-year-old face and seen something that needed to be hidden away. Cassian Roe's building was the kind of place that made doormen nervous. Lyra walked past security like she belonged there, head high, wearing the only black dress she owned and shoes that pinched her feet. They tried to stop her at the elevator, but she had the contract in her bag, her father's death certificate, and a rage that made her voice cut like steel. "Tell Mr. Roe that Lyra Vale is here. Tell him I'm early." The penthouse was exactly what she expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that cost more than cars, art that probably belonged in museums. Cassian was in a meeting when she arrived. 3 men in suits who fell silent when she walked in. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge her at all, just kept talking in that low, even voice about shipping routes and percentages and people who'd failed to meet expectations. Lyra sat down in a chair that probably cost $5,000 and waited. The men left eventually, casting nervous glances her way. Still Cassian said nothing. He reviewed papers, made phone calls, acted like she was invisible. It should have made her angry. Instead, it made her curious. This was a test. Everything with men like him was a test. Finally, as midnight approached, he spoke. You can leave or you can wait. Either way, I own you by midnight. You don't own anything, Lyra said. Her voice was steady. You inherited a debt and a contract signed by a dead man. That's not the same thing. Now he looked at her. Really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. Vincent's daughter. I expected someone different. Everyone does. Lyra stood, walked to his desk, planted her hands on the polished surface. Here's what's going to happen. I'll stay. 1 year. I'll play whatever role you need. Attend your events. Be the obedient wife or daughter or whatever you're planning to parade me around as. In exchange, you tell me everything about my father's last 6 months. Every deal. Every mistake. Every person he met with. Every reason he had for selling his own daughter. Cassian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest, maybe, or amusement. And if I say no? Then I run. And you spend the next decade wondering if I'm the loose end that unravels everything you've built. My father kept secrets, Mr. Roe. He taught me some of them before he decided I was too innocent to know the rest. You really want to gamble that he didn't tell me something that could hurt you? The silence stretched between them, sharp and electric. Then Cassian smiled, and it was the most unsettling thing Lyra had ever seen. You're nothing like him. I know. He said you were soft, weak, that you'd never survive this world. He said a lot of things. Lyra's throat tightened. Most of them were lies. Cassian stood, moved around the desk with the fluid grace of a predator. He stopped close enough that Lyra had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. 1 year. But you live here. You attend every meeting I attend. You learn this world you think you're smart enough to navigate. And if you break my trust, if you betray me in any way, the deal is void and you belong to me in ways that contract doesn't specify. Understood. Lyra should have been afraid. Every instinct screamed at her to step back, to run, to remember that this man was dangerous in ways her father had only aspired to. But fear felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Understood. Do we have a deal? Cassian extended his hand. We have a deal. His grip was firm, warm, and when Lyra shook his hand, she felt like she'd just signed something far more binding than her father's contract. Something that didn't have words or clauses but would cost her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The first week was a study in silence. Cassian gave her a room with a view of the city, a closet full of clothes she'd never choose for herself, and instructions to be ready by 7 every morning. He didn't tell her ready for what, just ready. Lyra learned quickly that punctuality was currency in his world, and lateness was a debt no one wanted to owe. Breakfast was always the same. Coffee, black. Toast barely touched. Cassian reading reports while she sat across from him, studying his face for cracks in the facade. There were none. He was composed in a way that felt unnatural, like he'd trained himself to exist without the messy unpredictability of human emotion. It made her want to throw her coffee at him just to see if he'd flinch. On the 8th day, he finally spoke to her beyond logistics. You'll come with me today. Wear the gray suit. Where are we going? To work. Work, apparently, meant a conference room in a building that didn't officially exist. No sign on the door, no company name in the directory. Just floors of expensive nothing that hummed with quiet menace. The meeting had 7 people, all men, all watching her with the kind of curiosity usually reserved for exotic animals in zoos. Cassian didn't introduce her. He sat at the head of the table, and Lyra took the empty chair beside him, feeling every eye track her movement. Gentlemen, Cassian began, we have a problem in the shipping route through Baltimore. Someone's skimming product. I want to know who, and I want them handled by Friday. The discussion that followed was brutal in its efficiency. Names were mentioned with the casual certainty of death sentences. Numbers flew across the table like ammunition. Lyra stayed quiet, absorbing everything, filing away details she didn't fully understand but knew mattered. Her father had been mentioned twice. Both times, the men glanced at her, then away, like acknowledging her presence was somehow dangerous. After the meeting, Cassian walked her to the car in silence. Once inside, he finally spoke. "You were quiet. You didn't ask me to talk. Most people can't help themselves. They need to prove they belong in the room." Lyra looked at him. "I don't belong in that room. We both know it. Pretending otherwise would have made me look stupid." Something almost like approval crossed his face. "Your father would have talked. He always needed to be the smartest person present, even when he wasn't." Cassian's jaw tightened. "It got him killed." Lyra's heart stuttered. "What? You wanted information. There's your first piece. Vincent Vale died because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He bragged about a deal he was putting together, told people who shouldn't have known, and someone decided he was more valuable dead than alive. Who? That's the question, isn't it?" Cassian's gaze was steady, unreadable. "Someone in that room today knows. Maybe more than one. Your father trusted the wrong people. I don't intend to make the same mistake. Is that why I'm here? To see who reacts to me." "Partially." Cassian's tone was matter-of-fact. "Also because you have his eyes. People who knew him will see ghosts when they look at you. Ghosts make people careless." Lyra's hands clenched in her lap. "You're using me as bait. I'm using every resource available. That includes you." He paused. "Unless you'd prefer to go back to your apartment and your podcasts and pretend none of this matters." "It matters." The words came out sharper than intended. "He was still my father. Even if he was a bastard who sold me like livestock, he was still my father." Cassian nodded once, and they didn't speak again until they were back at the penthouse. But that night Lyra couldn't sleep. She lay in her expensive bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her father's last moments. Had he known he was dying? Had he thought about her? Or had she been just another asset in his mental inventory, already written off and forgotten? At 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. The penthouse was dark except for the ambient glow of the city through the windows. She was reaching for a glass when she heard footsteps behind her. "Can't sleep." Cassian's voice was quieter than usual, almost human. Lyra didn't turn around. "What gave it away?" "The fact that you're in my kitchen at 2 a.m. He moved past her, pulled down 2 glasses, poured whiskey into both. He slid one across the counter to her. "Drink. It helps." "Does it?" Lyra picked up the glass but didn't drink. "Do you think about them? The people you've killed?" "Every single one." The answer surprised her. She'd expected deflection, or denial, or cold indifference. Not this quiet certainty. "How do you live with it?" "By being very clear about who deserves it and who doesn't." Cassian took a slow sip. "Your father understood that once. Then he started making exceptions. Started thinking he could play both sides. That's when he became dangerous to everyone, including himself." "You sound like you pitied him." "I did. Pity doesn't mean I wouldn't have killed him if necessary." Cassian's eyes found hers in the darkness. "But I didn't. Someone else did, and they made it look like natural causes. Heart attack. Clean, professional. The kind of death that doesn't raise questions." Lyra's stomach turned. "How do you know it wasn't natural?" "Because I had your father's body examined before the official autopsy. Traces of digoxin. Just enough to stop his heart without leaving obvious evidence. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." The glass nearly slipped from Lyra's hand. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Cassian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because the police work for whoever pays them most that week. Reporting it would have told the killer I was looking, and I prefer my enemies comfortable and careless." He set his glass down. "But now you know. Your father was murdered. Someone in his inner circle, someone he trusted enough to be alone with, poisoned him. And that same someone is probably in my organization now, waiting to see what you know and how much of a threat you are." Terror and fury warred in Lyra's chest. "Then why bring me into this? Why not just tell me to run?" Because you're the only person who might recognize something off. A detail, a phrase, a reaction. Your father kept things from me near the end. Secrets, he said, would change everything. If those secrets are in someone's possession, they might slip when they see you. Cassian's gaze was intense. And because despite what your father thought, you're not soft. You're angry. And anger is useful if it's directed properly. Lyra drained her whiskey in one burning swallow. What if I can't do this? What if I see the person who killed him and I freeze? You won't. How do you know? Because you're Vincent Vale's daughter, and whatever else he wasn't a coward. Neither are you. Cassian moved toward the hallway, then paused. Get some sleep, Lyra. Tomorrow we're visiting one of your father's old associates. A man named Marcus Chin. He was at your father's house the day before he died. I want to see how he reacts to you. And if he's the one? Cassian's smile was cold and sharp. Then you'll get to learn what I do to people who cross me. He left her alone in the kitchen, the taste of whiskey burning her throat, her father's murder sitting in her stomach like lead. Lyra stared out at the city, at the lights that made everything look clean and beautiful from a distance, and made a decision. If someone killed her father, she would find them. And when she did, she wouldn't let Cassian handle it alone. This was her vengeance too, her right. Her father had tried to keep her out of this world, but he'd failed. Now she'd make damn sure everyone knew exactly how much of Vincent Vale lived on in his daughter. The next morning, Lyra wore black. Not because Cassian told her to, but because it felt appropriate. Mourning and war, wrapped into one. When she met him at breakfast, he noticed the choice but said nothing. They drove to Marcus Chen's restaurant in silence, the city blurring past the tinted windows. Marcus Chen's restaurant was the kind of place where politicians and criminals ate at adjacent tables and pretended not to recognize each other. White tablecloths, soft lighting, waiters who moved like shadows. Lyra had been here once as a child, remembered her father laughing over wine while she picked at pasta she was too nervous to eat. Walking through the doors now felt like stepping into a memory that wanted to devour her. Marcus was waiting in a private room at the back, and his face went pale when he saw Lyra. Actually pale, the color draining so fast she thought he might faint. "Vincent's girl," he whispered. "My God. You look just like him." "So I've been told." Lyra sat down across from him, Cassian taking the seat beside her. Close enough that their shoulders almost touched. A united front, or at least the appearance of one. Marcus recovered quickly, schooling his features into something resembling composure. "I didn't expect to see you here, Lyra. I thought you'd left all this behind." "Things change." Lyra kept her voice even, watching his hands. Her father had taught her that hands always told the truth. Marcus's were still, too still, like he was concentrating hard on keeping them steady. "I wanted to talk to people who knew my father at the end." "You saw him the day before he died, didn't you?" "I did." Marcus glanced at Cassian, then back to her. "We had lunch, discussed old times. He seemed fine, Lyra. Healthy, happy even. His death was a shock to all of us." "What did you discuss?" Cassian's voice was casual, but there was steel underneath. "Specifically, business mostly, the usual. Vincent was working on expanding into new territories, wanted my advice on distribution networks." Marcus poured himself wine with hands that trembled slightly. "He mentioned you, Lyra. Said he regretted sending you away. That he wished things had been different." Lyra's throat tightened. She didn't want to believe him, didn't want to let those words touch her, but they burrowed in anyway. "Did he say anything about enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt him?" Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation, Lyra saw something flicker across his face. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Vincent always had enemies. That's the nature of this business. But no one specific, no. He seemed confident, in control. Whatever he was planning, he thought he had it handled. "But he didn't," Cassian said quietly. "He's dead, and someone killed him. Digoxin poisoning. Professional, clean. The kind of thing that requires access and knowledge." Marcus's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips. "Poisoning?" The autopsy said heart attack. The official autopsy. Cassian leaned forward. I had my own conducted. Someone wanted Vincent dead and made it look natural. Someone who knew his schedule, his habits. Someone he trusted enough to accept a drink from. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus set his glass down carefully, like it might shatter. If that's true, then we're all in danger. Anyone Vincent trusted could be next. Or, Lyra said softly, anyone Vincent trusted could be the killer. Marcus's eyes snapped to hers, and for a moment she saw real fear there. Then it was gone, replaced by indignation. You think I killed him? Vincent was my friend for 30 years. Friendship doesn't mean much in this world. Cassian's tone was matter-of-fact. We've both seen friends turn on each other for less than what Vincent was sitting on. What was he sitting on? Lyra demanded. Everyone keeps talking about secrets and deals, but no one tells me what they actually were. Marcus looked between them, calculation clear on his face. Finally, he sighed. Your father was working on something big. A consolidation of the major families, a way to end the constant territorial wars. He had files, documentation, leverage on everyone important. If he'd pulled it off, he would have been untouchable. King of the entire eastern seaboard. Lyra felt the words land like blows. Her father, always so careful to keep her away from his work, had been planning to become the most powerful criminal on the coast. Where are these files now? That's the question everyone's asking. Marcus spread his hands. Vincent died and the files disappeared. Some people think Cassian has them. Others think they're still hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. Cassian's expression didn't change, but Lyra felt him tense beside her. If I had them, Marcus, you'd know. I don't play games with power. I take it. Then someone else has them. Or they're destroyed. Marcus stood, clearly ready for this conversation to end. I'm sorry about your father, Lyra. Truly. But if you're looking for his killer, you're looking in the wrong place. I had nothing to gain from his death. They left the restaurant with more questions than answers. In the car, Lyra turned to Cassian. He's lying. About something. I could feel it. So could I. Cassian's jaw was tight. But lying doesn't make him the killer. Everyone lies in this business. It's survival. Then how do we find the truth? By making people more afraid of us than they are of the killer. Cassian pulled out his phone, made a call. I'm moving up the timeline. If someone has your father's files, they'll use them soon. We need to find them first. The next 3 days were a blur of meetings, each one more tense than the last. Lyra met men who'd known her father, who looked at her with varying degrees of suspicion, pity, or calculation. She learned to read faces, to catch the micro-expressions that betrayed thoughts people tried to hide. And slowly a picture began to form. Her father had been close to something massive, something that had made powerful people very nervous. Someone had decided that stopping him was worth the risk of murder. On the 4th night, Cassian took her to a warehouse on the waterfront. Your father used to come here, he said as they walked through the empty space. He kept a storage unit, said it was for old files, things he didn't want at home or in the office. You think the files are here? I think if they're anywhere, they're here. Cassian led her to a unit in the back, produced a key. I found this in his desk after he died. Been waiting for the right time to look. The unit was small, dusty, filled with boxes that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Lyra started going through them, pulling out folders, reading names and dates that meant nothing to her. Tax documents, property deeds, photographs of her as a child, smiling at a camera, unaware of what her life would become. Cassian, her voice cracked. Look at this. She held up a folder labeled with her name. Inside were documents, detailed records of payments made over 6 years. Tuition, rent, living expenses. Her father had been supporting her the entire time she thought she'd been independent. Every dollar she'd earned, every choice she thought was hers, had been subsidized by blood money she never knew existed. He was protecting you. Cassian's voice was surprisingly gentle. Keeping you at a distance but making sure you were safe. He was controlling me. Lyra's hands shook. Even when I thought I was free, he was pulling strings, making sure I stayed exactly where he wanted me. Maybe, or maybe he just loved you in the only way he knew how. Cassian took the folder from her, set it aside. Keep looking. The files have to be here. They searched for hours, box after box, folder after folder, finding nothing but the debris of Vincent Vale's life. Lyra was ready to give up when she noticed something odd. One box, tucked in the corner, had a different kind of dust pattern, like it had been moved recently, then placed back carefully. Inside were USB drives. Dozens of them, each labeled with initials and dates. Lyra's hands trembled as she held them. This is it. This has to be it. Cassian took one, examined it. We need to see what's on these. But not here. If someone knows about this place, they could be watching. They loaded the drives into a bag and left. Lyra felt like she was carrying a bomb. These tiny pieces of plastic contained something worth killing for, something her father had died protecting. As they drove back through the empty streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Every car behind them looked suspicious. Every shadow held a threat. Cassian, she said quietly, when we find out who killed him, what happens? What do you want to happen? Lyra thought about her father, about the man who'd sent her away and supported her in secret, who'd built an empire and tried to keep her hands clean. I want them to pay, not just die. Pay. Cassian's smile was sharp and approving. Then that's what we'll arrange. Back at the penthouse, they plugged in the first drive. What they found made Lyra's blood run cold. Financial records, yes. Incriminating evidence, absolutely. But also videos. Conversations. Meetings where people said things they'd kill to keep secret. Her father had been building leverage, but he'd also been building a target on his back. The first video showed Marcus Chin. He was younger, maybe 5 years ago, sitting across from her father in what looked like a hotel room. His voice was frantic, desperate. Vincent, please. If this gets out, my family is dead. Not just me. My wife, my children. They'll kill everyone. Her father's voice, calm and measured. Then you'll do exactly what I ask when I ask it. Insurance, Marcus. That's all this is. Behave, and no one ever sees this. Lyra felt sick. She'd spent the last week trying to reconcile the father who'd sent her away with the man who'd apparently cared enough to support her from afar. Now she was watching him blackmail someone with their family's lives. He was a monster. He was pragmatic. Cassian's tone was neutral, clinical. In this world, leverage is survival. Your father understood that better than most. That doesn't make it right. No. But it kept him alive for a very long time. Cassian clicked to the next file. Until it didn't. They watched for hours. Video after video, each one more damning than the last. Politicians taking bribes. Judges fixing cases. Rival crime families making deals they'd sworn in public they'd never make. Her father had collected these secrets like some people collected art, and he'd wielded them with surgical precision. But one video made Lyra's heart stop completely. It showed a woman, late 40s, elegant, with eyes like ice. She was sitting in the same chair Lyra had occupied in Cassian's penthouse just days ago. You're making a mistake, Vincent, the woman said. Trying to unite the families will only make them turn on you faster. They'll fall in line, Diana. They always do. Her father's voice was confident, almost arrogant. I have enough on each of them to bury their organizations 10 times over. They'll cooperate or they'll burn. Diana leaned forward, and something in her expression made Lyra's skin crawl. And what about Cassian? You think he'll just hand over control because you ask nicely? Cassian is smart enough to see the value in partnership. He's not like the others. He thinks long-term. He thinks about survival. And you're threatening that. Diana stood. Be careful, old friend. The higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. The video ended. Lyra looked at Cassian, whose face had gone very still. Who is she? Diana Kovac. She runs the Western Territories, mostly drugs and weapons. Your father and she went back decades. They were partners once, before they went their separate ways. Cassian's voice was tight. She had the most to lose if Vincent succeeded. A unified organization would have meant giving up her independence, submitting to someone else's rules. So she killed him? Maybe. Or she knows who did. Cassian ejected the drive, stood. We need to talk to her. Tonight. It's 3 in the morning. Then we'll wake her up. Diana Kovac lived in a brownstone that looked deceptively ordinary from the outside. Inside, it was a fortress. Security cameras, reinforced doors, men with guns positioned at every entrance. They let Cassian through without question. But their eyes tracked Lyra like she was a threat they hadn't anticipated. Diana was waiting in a sitting room that smelled of expensive perfume and old money. She looked exactly like she had in the video, barely aged, still radiating that same cold control. When she saw Lyra, something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Vincent's daughter, she said softly. I heard Cassian had acquired you. I didn't believe it until now. Acquired is one word for it. Lyra sat down without being invited, channeling every ounce of confidence she'd learned from watching Cassian. We need to talk about my father. What's there to talk about? He's dead. Tragic, but not unexpected. Vincent made a lot of enemies in his time. Diana poured tea like they were having a social visit. Sugar. Information. Cassian's voice cut through the pleasantries. Vincent was building something, and someone killed him to stop it. You warned him it would happen. I want to know what you know. Diana's smile didn't reach her eyes. I warned him because I cared about him, not because I was involved in his death. Vincent was reckless at the end. Paranoid. He thought he could control everyone, and it made him blind to the knives at his back. He had files on everyone. Lyra kept her voice steady. Leverage. Enough to destroy entire organizations. Did you know about that? Of course I knew. Vincent loved showing off his power. It was his fatal flaw. Diana sipped her tea. But files only matter if you're alive to use them. Dead men can't pull triggers, sweetheart. Someone wanted those files, Cassian said. Either to use them or destroy them. You're telling me you had no interest in getting your hands on whatever Vincent had on you. Diana's composure cracked, just slightly. Vincent had nothing on me that mattered. Our arrangement was always clean, mutually beneficial. If he tried to use leverage against me, I would have handled it directly, not through poison. She set her cup down with deliberate care. You want to know who killed him? Look at who had the most to gain from his death and his files. Look at who's been consolidating power since he died. Lyra felt the implication like a slap. She turned to Cassian, saw his jaw tighten. You think Cassian killed him? I think Cassian is the only person who benefited from Vincent's death. He got the territory, the connections, and apparently Vincent's daughter as a bonus. Diana's smile was razor-sharp. Seems convenient, doesn't it? If I wanted Vincent dead, I wouldn't have needed poison. Cassian's voice was dangerously quiet. I would have put a bullet in his head in front of witnesses and dared anyone to complain. That's how I operate, Diana. You know that. People change. Power changes people. Diana stood, signaling the meeting was over. You want my advice, Lyra? Be very careful who you trust. Your father learned that lesson too late. Don't make the same mistake. They left with Diana's words echoing in Lyra's head. In the car, she stared at Cassian's profile, trying to read something, anything, in his expression. Did you kill him?
No.
But you wanted to? Cassian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Your father was a problem. He was building something that would have disrupted everything, caused wars we couldn't afford. Did I think about removing him? Yes. Did I do it? No. Because despite everything, Vincent and I had an understanding. We were going to work together, not against each other. Then why the contract? Why bind me to you if you weren't planning to use me against him? Because Vincent asked me to. Cassian's voice was rough. 3 months before he died, he came to me. Said he was working on something dangerous, something that might get him killed. He wanted to make sure you were protected if that happened. The contract was his idea, not mine. He trusted me to keep you safe. Lyra's world tilted. That doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? Because he was your father, and for all his flaws, he loved you. He knew his enemies might come after you to get to him or to find his files. Binding you to me meant putting you under the protection of the one person in this world powerful enough to keep you alive. Cassian finally looked at her. I didn't want this, Lyra. I don't collect people. But I made a promise to a dying man, and I keep my promises. Tears burned Lyra's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. If you're telling the truth, then someone else killed him. Someone who knew about the contract, who knew you'd end up with me, and who's been waiting to see what you know, what you'd find. Cassian's expression was grim. We've been played from the start. Someone wanted Vincent dead, wanted his files found, and wanted us chasing our tails while they consolidated their position. Diana, maybe, or someone else entirely. Someone patient enough to wait, smart enough to use Vincent's own paranoia against him. Cassian pulled into the penthouse garage. We need to go through every file, every video. The answer is there. It has to be. They spent the rest of the night in Cassian's office, surrounded by screens showing her father's carefully documented betrayals. Lyra's eyes burned. Her head ached. But she refused to stop. Somewhere in this digital graveyard was the truth. Somewhere was the person who'd stolen her father from her, who'd turned her life into this nightmare of contracts and consequences. It was almost dawn when she found it. A video dated 2 weeks before her father's death. The angle was different, handheld, like her father had been recording secretly. The audio was muffled, but she could make out voices. Her father's and another. Male, familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. You promised me equal partnership, Vincent. Instead, you're cutting me out. Because you're a liability. You talk too much, take too many risks. This operation requires precision. So you're just going to erase me? After everything I've done for you, you'll be compensated fairly. But you're out. The video shook, like her father's hand had trembled. Then the other voice, cold and final. You're making a mistake, one you won't live to regret. Lyra's hands went numb. She knew that voice. She'd heard it just days ago, smooth and reassuring, talking about old friendships and shared history. It's Marcus. Marcus Chun killed him. Cassian was beside her in seconds, watching the video replay. His expression turned to stone. That bastard sat across from us and lied to our faces. He had motive. My father was cutting him out of the biggest deal of his life. Lyra's voice shook with rage. And he had access. They had lunch the day before my father died. He could have poisoned him then. The question is whether he acted alone or if someone else was pulling strings. Cassian pulled out his phone. Either way, he's a dead man. I just need to decide how public to make it. Wait. Lyra grabbed his arm. If we kill him now, we might never know if he was working with someone. Diana or someone else. We need him alive long enough to talk. Cassian looked at her, and something shifted in his gaze. Respect, maybe, or recognition that she was more like her father than either of them had anticipated. You want to interrogate him. I want answers. Then I want him to suffer. Lyra's voice was steady, cold. My father might have been a bastard, but he was my bastard. Marcus doesn't get to walk away from this. All right. Cassian made a call, his voice low and commanding. Bring Marcus Chun to the warehouse. Quietly. I don't care what excuse you use. Just get him there within the hour. He hung up, turned to Lyra. This is going to get ugly. If you want to stay here, I'm coming. Lyra stood, and the fear she'd been carrying for days crystallized into something harder, sharper. Purpose. I need to see his face when he realizes we know. The warehouse was the same one where they'd found her father's files. Fitting in a way that it would also be where they'd extract his killer's confession. Marcus was already there when they arrived, standing between two of Cassian's men, confusion clear on his face. Cassian? What's this about? Your men said it was urgent. It is. Cassian's voice was conversational, almost friendly. We found something interesting in Vincent's files. Thought you might want to see it. Lyra stepped forward, holding a tablet. She pressed play, and Marcus's face drained of color as his own voice filled the warehouse. You're making a mistake. One you won't live to regret. That's out of context. We were arguing about business, nothing more. Marcus's eyes darted between them, looking for escape. There wasn't any. Vincent and I had disagreements, but I would never. You poisoned him. Lyra's voice cut through his protests like a blade. Digoxin probably slipped into his drink at lunch. Clean, professional. The kind of murder that looks like natural causes unless someone knows to look closer. You have no proof. That video doesn't prove anything. Marcus's composure was cracking, desperation bleeding through. I loved Vincent like a brother. Brothers don't threaten each other's lives. Cassian moved closer, and Marcus flinched. But you're right about one thing. That video alone isn't enough for proof. That's why we're going to have a conversation about what really happened. And you're going to tell us everything. What followed was brutal. Cassian didn't lay a hand on Marcus himself. Didn't need to. His men were efficient, methodical, and Marcus broke faster than Lyra expected. Within 20 minutes, he was sobbing, words spilling out between gasps of pain. It wasn't just me. Diana said Vincent was going to destroy everything we'd built. That his consolidation plan would make us all servants instead of partners. She said he had to be stopped. Marcus's face was bloody, swollen. She provided the poison. I just had to deliver it. She promised me his territory, his connections. Said we'd split everything after he was gone. And the files. Cassian's voice was eerily calm. Did Diana know about them? She suspected. Vincent was too confident for a man without leverage. She wanted me to find them after he died. Destroy anything that implicated her. Marcus laughed, a broken sound. But you found them first. You and Vincent's little girl. Diana's going to lose her mind when she finds out. Lyra stepped forward, crouched down so she was eye level with Marcus. My father trusted you. For 30 years, he trusted you. Your father was a tyrant who wanted to control everyone. He would have crushed us all under his heel. Marcus spat blood. I don't regret killing him. I regret failing to find those files first. Lyra stood, looked at Cassian. I'm done here. Cassian nodded once. Marcus Chun, you killed Vincent Vale. For that, you've forfeited your life, your organization, and any legacy you might have hoped to leave. Your family will be spared, but everything you built dies with you tonight. He turned to his men. Make it clean. I don't want complications. They left Marcus pleading for mercy he wouldn't receive. In the car, Lyra felt strangely hollow. She'd wanted answers, wanted vengeance, and now she had both. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like falling, like the ground had disappeared and she was still waiting to hit bottom. Diana's next, Cassian said quietly. She orchestrated this. Marcus was just the weapon. Can you prove it? Marcus's confession is enough for our world. Diana will know we're coming for her. Cassian's jaw tightened. She'll either run or fight. My money's on fight. What happens if she wins? She won't. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Your father trusted me to protect you. That means ending the threat Diana represents. Permanently. They went back to the penthouse as dawn broke over the city. Lyra stood at the window, watching light spill across buildings, thinking about how many secrets those windows hid. How many people were playing games just like this one, using leverage and violence to stay ahead of the knives at their backs. I'm not soft, she said suddenly. My father was wrong about that. I'm exactly what this world made me. Cassian came to stand beside her. You're more than that. You could have run a dozen times. Could have let me handle this alone. But you stayed, fought, got your hands dirty. That takes courage Vincent never gave you credit for. Because he never gave me the chance. Lyra turned to face him. The contract. The year I'm supposed to stay. What happens after? You're free to go. That was always the deal. But something in Cassian's expression suggested he wasn't entirely sure she'd leave. Or that he wanted her to. And if I don't want to go? If I want to finish what my father started, but do it better, without the blackmail and the paranoia. Lyra's heart was racing. Could we really unite the families? End the constant wars? Cassian studied her for a long moment. It would take years, blood, sacrifices neither of us can fully anticipate. And you'd have to become someone even harder than your father was. I'm already becoming that person. Lyra felt the truth of it settle into her bones. Diana made sure of that when she killed him. Marcus made sure of that. They turned me into exactly what they feared most, Vincent Vale's daughter, with his intelligence and his ruthlessness, but without his weaknesses. Then we have work to do. Cassian's smile was sharp, approving. Starting with Diana. I'm moving against her organization tonight. Full assault. By morning, she'll have nothing left but the choice between surrender and death. I want to be there. I know you do. Cassian handed her something. A gun, small and deadly. Your father would have hated this. Hated that I put you in danger, that I let you anywhere near this life. Lyra took the gun, felt its weight. Remembered pointing one at Cassian just weeks ago, her hand trembling with fear and rage. Her hand was steady now. My father doesn't get a say anymore. This is my choice. That night, Lyra learned what war looked like in Cassian's world. It wasn't dramatic or theatrical. It was efficient, brutal, and over before Diana even understood she'd lost. Her warehouses burned. Her dealers scattered. Her protection evaporated like smoke. By 3 in the morning, Diana Kovac was cornered in her brownstone with nowhere left to run. Cassian let Lyra go in first. Diana was in her sitting room, the same one where they'd had tea just days ago. But now the elegant facade was gone. She looked old, tired, defeated. Vincent's daughter, she said quietly. Come to finish what he started. Come to finish what you started when you killed him. Lyra kept the gun steady, pointed at Diana's chest. Marcus confessed, told us everything. The poison, the plan, your promises. It's over, Diana. Is it? Diana laughed, bitter and broken. Vincent built an empire on secrets and fear. You think you and Cassian can do better? You'll just become the next tyrants. Someone will poison you in 10 years, and the cycle continues. Maybe. Lyra's finger rested on the trigger. But at least we'll have tried to build something better than what you and Marcus wanted to preserve. At least we'll have tried. Then do it. Pull the trigger. Become exactly what your father tried to save you from becoming. Diana's eyes were bright with malice. Or prove you're still that soft little girl he sent away. Lyra thought about her father. About the man who'd blackmailed and threatened and controlled, but who'd also loved her enough to try protecting her from this exact moment. She thought about Cassian's words, that she was more than what this world had made her. And she made her choice. She lowered the gun. Cassian. He stepped into the room, understood immediately. Diana's death wouldn't be on Lyra's conscience. The city looked different in the aftermath. Cleaner somehow, like a wound that had finally been cauterized. Lyra stood on the penthouse balcony 3 days after Diana's death, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of gold and blood. Behind her, she could hear Cassian on the phone, his voice low and commanding as he reshaped the territory Diana had left behind. It was almost elegant, the way he dismantled her organization piece by piece, absorbing what was useful and discarding the rest. Coffee? Cassian appeared beside her, holding 2 cups. He'd barely slept in 72 hours, but he looked more alive than she'd ever seen him. Energized by the violence and the victory, Lyra took the cup, let the warmth seep into her hands. Do you ever regret it? The life you chose? Every day. The answer surprised her. But regret doesn't mean I change it. This world needs someone capable of bringing order to chaos. If not me, then someone worse. He paused. Your father understood that. He just wanted different rules than I did. What were his rules? Control through fear and leverage. Make people more afraid of betraying you than of dying. Cassian's voice was thoughtful. My rules are simpler. Keep your word. Protect your people. And if someone crosses you, make sure they can't do it twice. And which rules am I supposed to follow? Lyra turned to face him. I'm Vincent Vale's daughter, bound to Cassian Roe by a contract signed in blood and desperation. Where do I fit in all this? Cassian's gaze was steady, intense. Where do you want to fit? Before Lyra could answer, Cassian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned. It's the lawyer, the one who gave you the contract. He answered, listened, and his expression shifted to something Lyra couldn't read. We'll be there in an hour. What is it? Your father's will. Apparently, there's a second part that could only be read after certain conditions were met. Cassian's tone was grim. Diana's death was one of them. The lawyer's office was exactly what Lyra expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, books that probably cost more than most people's cars. The lawyer himself looked exhausted, like he'd been dreading this meeting since Vincent Vale had died. Miss Vale, Mr. Roe, thank you for coming. Your father left very specific instructions about this portion of his estate. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a letter, written in her father's precise handwriting. Lyra's hands trembled as she picked it up. Lyra, if you're reading this, then Diana is dead and you've survived long enough to see justice done. I'm proud of you, though I imagine you hate me right now. You have every right to. I made choices that hurt you, kept you in the dark, used you as leverage in a game you didn't know you were playing. But everything I did to give you something I never had, a choice. By now you know about the files, the empire I was building, the enemies I made. You know that Cassian Roe holds a contract that binds you to him, and you probably think I sold you like livestock. The truth is more complicated. 3 months before I died, I knew someone was going to kill me. I could feel the knives gathering at my back. Diana was the most likely candidate, though Marcus was desperate enough to be dangerous too. I couldn't stop them without starting a war that would consume everything I'd built. So I made a deal with the one man I knew would keep his word. Cassian Roe is many things. Ruthless, calculating, violent when necessary, but he's not a liar. When he makes a promise, he keeps it. I asked him to protect you if I died, to give you time to understand this world before throwing you into it. The contract was never about ownership, Lyra. It was about giving you a shield strong enough to survive long enough to decide who you wanted to become. In this folder, you'll find documentation transferring 50% of my estate to you. Not the money, that's already been distributed according to my primary will. This is the real estate, the businesses, the connections, the infrastructure of the empire I built. The other 50% goes to Cassian, as payment for protecting you and as incentive to help you learn how to wield power without being consumed by it. You have a choice now, my daughter. You can walk away, take the money from the primary will, and build a life far from this violence. Cassian will honor that choice. Or you can stay, learn from him, and become the queen I always knew you could be. Not my legacy. Yours. Whatever you choose, know that I loved you. That everything I did, every terrible choice, was motivated by the desperate hope that you'd survive me and become something better than I ever was. You were never too soft for this world, Lyra. You were too good for it. But if you choose to stay, I know you'll change it in ways I never could. Your father, Vincent Vale. Lyra read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. The lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. There are documents that need signing, regardless of your decision. The transfer is automatic, but there are legal formalities. I'll sign them. Lyra's voice was steady despite the tears. All of them. Cassian had been quiet through the entire reading, but now he spoke. You don't have to decide right now. Take time. Think about what you want. I've been thinking about it since the day I walked into your penthouse with a contract and a death wish. Lyra wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. My father spent his life building an empire based on fear and control. It got him killed. You've built yours on ruthless efficiency and kept promises. It's made you powerful, but it's also isolated you. Everyone fears you, but no one trusts you. Trust is a luxury in this business. Maybe, or maybe it's the foundation that's been missing. Lyra pulled out a pen, started signing documents. My father wanted to unite the families through blackmail and leverage. You want to control them through superior force. I think there's a third option. Partnership. Real partnership, where everyone has skin in the game and a reason to succeed together. Cassian leaned back, studying her with that intense gaze that had frightened her weeks ago but now just made her feel seen. You're talking about restructuring the entire organization. That'll take years, and it'll make us enemies we can't anticipate. Then it's a good thing I'm inheriting half an empire, and the man who taught my father everything he knew about survival is contractually obligated to work with me. Lyra signed the last document, slid the folder back to the lawyer.
I'm staying, Cassian.
Not because a contract says I have to, but because I choose to, and we're going to build something that doesn't require poisoning and blackmail to maintain. The lawyer looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the tension crackling in the air. I'll file these immediately. Miss Vale, Mr. Roe, congratulations on your new partnership. Your father would be... well, he'd be something. They left the office in silence. In the car, Cassian finally spoke. Your father was right about one thing. You're not soft, but you're also not like him or like me. I'm not sure what you are yet. Neither am I. Lyra looked out at the city, at the empire she'd just inherited half of. But I'm going to figure it out. And you're going to help me. Because despite everything, you made a promise to a dying man. And you keep your promises. What if I don't like who you become? Then you'll tell me. That's the deal. Honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Lyra turned to face him. My father built his empire on secrets and lies. Killed him. We're not making the same mistake. Cassian's laugh was low, almost admiring. You realize you're describing an impossible standard? This business runs on deception. Then we change the business. Or at least our corner of it. Lyra felt the weight of her decision settling into her bones. Solid and sure. I'm not naive, Cassian. I know there will be violence, compromise, choices that keep me awake at night. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to take what my father started and make it into something sustainable, we need to build it on something stronger than fear. And you think trust is that foundation? I think it's worth trying. Because the alternative is living the way my father did. Paranoid, isolated, always waiting for the knife at his back. He died alone, Cassian. Killed by someone he'd called a friend for 30 years. I won't live like that, and I don't think you want to either. They drove back to the penthouse in silence, but it felt different than before. Less like a prisoner and her captor, more like partners trying to figure out the rules of a game they were inventing as they went. When they arrived, Cassian pulled out a bottle of whiskey, the expensive kind that probably cost more than Lyra's old apartment, and poured 2 glasses. To Vincent Vale, he said, raising his glass. A bastard who loved his daughter enough to give her a choice, even if it meant trusting his greatest rival to protect her. Lyra raised her glass. And to new partnerships. May we be smarter than our predecessors and luckier than we deserve. They drank, and Lyra felt the burn of whiskey and possibility. The next months would be brutal. Consolidating her father's holdings, learning the intricacies of an empire built on violence and pragmatism. Proving to men like Marcus and Diana that Vincent Vale's daughter was not just her father's legacy, but something new entirely. But for the first time since her father's death, Lyra felt like she could breathe. Like the cage she'd been living in had transformed into a kingdom, and she was finally ready to claim her throne. Tomorrow we start restructuring, Cassian said. I'll introduce you to the key players, the ones who'll either support us or need to be removed. It won't be pretty. I don't need pretty. I need effective. Lyra set down her glass. But tonight I need sleep. Real sleep. Not the kind where I'm waiting for someone to break in and finish what Diana started. Cassian nodded. You're safe here. Whatever else happens, that contract your father signed ensures it. You're under my protection until the year is up, and after that. He paused. After that, you'll be powerful enough that you won't need protection anymore. Lyra went to her room now, not a guest suite but a part of the empire she'd inherited, and for the first time in weeks, she slept without nightmares. She dreamed instead of her father, younger than she'd ever known him, standing in an empty warehouse much like the one where they'd found his files. In the dream, he smiled at her with something like pride, then faded into shadows that didn't feel threatening anymore. Just inevitable. Just the cost of choosing to stay in a world that devoured the weak and tested the strong. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through her windows, and she could hear Cassian already on the phone, his voice carrying the weight of commands that would reshape territories and lives. Lyra got dressed in clothes that fit her new role. Expensive, elegant, with an edge that said she wasn't someone to be underestimated, and went to join him. The war was over. Marcus was dead, Diana was dead, and the empire her father had died trying to build was now hers to shape. But the real work was just beginning. Building something that could last, that didn't require poison and blackmail and constant vigilance against betrayal. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had surviving the last 3 weeks, and she'd done that. Lyra Vale, daughter of Vincent Vale, partner to Cassian Roe, walked into the office where maps and files and the infrastructure of criminal empire were spread across every surface, and she got to work. The past couldn't be escaped, but it could be transformed. And she would spend however long it took proving that her father's faith in her, his desperate gamble with Cassian's integrity, hadn't been wasted. She would become something this world had never seen before. Not a tyrant like her father, not a ruthless enforcer like Cassian, but something new. Something that might just survive long enough to matter. And if that made her dangerous, well, she'd learned from the best. If you enjoyed Lyra's journey from grief to power, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Urban Folks TV for more stories of betrayal, survival, and redemption, and drop a comment below telling us what you think happens next. Does Lyra succeed in transforming her father's empire? Or will the darkness she's embraced consume her the way it consumed Vincent Vale? Let us know what you think, and we'll see you in the next story.